The lost one. The cockpit was a tomb. Flickering readouts danced across shattered panels, casting dim light over Lieutenant Elena Rourke's blood-slick flight suit. Alarms had long gone silent, either from system failure or because there was simply nothing left to warn her about. Outside the mangled scout ship, the world was alien and still. Purple-tinged trees swayed under a green sky. A silver sun cast long shadows over a jagged horizon. Elena blinked, slow and deliberate. The pain in her leg was sharp, but duller than before. She wasn't sure if that meant she was healing or dying. With effort, she pulled the emergency beacon from its casing, keyed in a coded distress signal, and whispered, "Come on, old girl. Don't quit on me now." The transmitter hummed to life for about 3 seconds before sparking and dying in her hands. She slumped back against the seat and exhaled a thin, bitter laugh. No one was coming. She didn't know how many hours or days passed before she heard them. At first, the voices were a low murmur through the hull, then sharper, more guttural, spoken in a language not translated by any standard Earth protocol. The canopy creaked. Silhouettes moved across the light. Then came the sound of tools, deliberate, cautious. The cockpit hissed open. Elena squinted upward at 3 tall figures, reptilian, scaled, and adorned in bone-crafted robes and armor. Their slitted eyes glowed faintly amber in the light. One of them barked a command, but Elena barely heard it before unconsciousness took her. When she awoke, she was in a dark, cool chamber. Bandages wrapped her leg. Her body ached, but the painkillers had done their job. A warm broth sat beside her, steam rising in the damp air. She wasn't alone. A Rathuuni stood at the edge of the room, arms crossed, watching her with a steady gaze. Smaller than the others, and clearly younger. He wore no armor, only a dark sash with a carved stone tied at the waist. "You live," he said in accented standard. Elena blinked. "You speak English?" "Learn from your system," he replied, gesturing to a salvaged datapad on a nearby table. "I am Kitun. I am healer. You saved me." "I did." "Why?" Kitun's throat rumbled. A gesture she would learn meant amusement. "You fell from the sky. You were broken. Healing is the way." She looked at him, trying to read more behind his words. "And the others? Your people?" He hesitated. "They fear you. You are an omen, maybe. The elders say we should leave you to the stars. But you didn't." Kitun inclined his head. "Not all traditions are sacred. Some are only old." Over the weeks that followed, Elena recovered. The Rathuuni allowed her to remain in a cave network near their city, watched but unharmed. She learned their customs, their stories carved into stone with obsidian knives. She helped Kitun craft better splints using human schematics and translated a rudimentary star map into their memory stones. Trust was slow to build, but it came. One night, under the strange constellations of Rathuun Prime, Elena handed Kitun a small, weatherproof device. It pulsed faintly with blue light. "This is a long-range quantum beacon," she said. "I encoded Earth protocols into it. Federation will read the signal if it's ever activated." Kitun turned it over in his clawed hands. "For what purpose?" "In case you ever need us. You saved my life. One day, that might matter." Kitun looked at her for a long time, then placed the device carefully in a carved stone box. "We remember debts, even across lifetimes." Elena left Rathuun Prime in a makeshift rescue pod weeks later, after a search drone finally found her. Before she left, Kitun gave her a shard of carved obsidian wrapped in cloth. "It bears your name in our tongue," he told her. "It means the star-touched one." She smiled. "I'll carry it always." And she did. Even as decades passed, as war and peace reshaped the galaxy, as names faded from memory, Rathuun Prime remained a ghost world in the records. Uncontacted, unclaimed, but the beacon endured. And one day, it would glow again. Ashes in the stars. The sky over Rathuun Prime was wrong. Where there had once been only drifting clouds and the silver sun, now hung a dark shape, angular, cold, and vast. It did not move like a ship. It loomed like a blade poised over the throat of the world. Elder Kitun stood at the edge of the high temple balcony his aged eyes narrowing. Below, the gathered Rathuuni watched in anxious silence. Children clung to their mothers. Warriors gripped ceremonial spears that would be useless against what was coming. A second shadow joined the first, then a third. The Xarn Dominion had arrived. In a Rathuuni council chamber, the air was thick with fear. Holographic images showed dozens of Xarn ships assembling in orbit. Scouts had already been lost, cut off mid-transmission. Their last messages carried static, screams, and then silence. "They do not come to speak," said High Strategist Chiral, his voice gravelly with age. "They come to harvest, like they did to the HRYLL moons." "We are not the HRYLL," another elder snapped. "We are Rathuun. We do not kneel. And yet we will burn," Chiral shot back. "Our defenses are ceremonial. Our fleet is a dozen trade barges and atmospheric skiffs. We have allies," someone offered. "The Galactic Council." Kitun raised a hand, silencing the room. "They will not come," he said quietly. The others stared. It was not what they expected from the most revered elder. Kitun, who once defied tradition to save an alien. Kitun, who'd spent years teaching younglings about a wider galaxy most had never seen. "The Council sees us as primitives," he continued. "Not worth their fleets. Not worth their blood." "Then we are finished," said Chiral. Kitun turned, slowly, his back stiff with age, but his voice steady. "No, there's one more hope." In the deepest chamber beneath the temple, Kitun brushed dust from an ancient box. Runes lined the edges, human letters, carefully etched in Rathuuni script. The younger counselors looked on in confusion as he opened the lid and withdrew a small device. Metallic, palm-sized, glowing faint blue. "A gift," he said, "from the human we once saved. Elena Rourke. It contains a message, encoded in Earth protocols." "You think they will answer a call from a single soul?" one of the elders scoffed. Kitun looked up, eyes burning. "We saved her. We healed her. We gave when we had nothing. Perhaps she was only one human, but she was theirs." He pressed the activation glyph. The beacon's glow deepened. A signal launched into the void, riding subspace, bouncing across decades of dust and stars. Kitun held the device to his chest and closed his eyes. "I remember you," Star-touched one. "Let them remember you, too." Hours passed. No reply came. The Xarn fleet began orbital maneuvers, lining up for planetary strike. Thunder cracked the sky. The Rathuuni scrambled in vain. Children hidden, warriors rallied, ancient city walls shored up with stone and prayer. Kitun stood alone in the courtyard, watching the sky as it darkened. Still no signal. A soft voice broke the silence. It was foolish, old one. He turned to see Chiral at the edge of the steps. Kitun gave a small, tired smile. "Hope often is." Chiral stepped beside him, looking upward. "Then let us meet them with teeth bared." But as they watched the sky, a flicker appeared. A distortion, a ripple in space, sharp and unnatural. Then came the lights. Bright, blinding. Dozens of them, pulsing with energy, streaking down through orbit like stars falling in reverse. Warp signatures. Massive ones. Kitun's breath caught. A voice rang out from a comm station behind them, broken by static but unmistakable. "Rathuun Prime, this is Earth Federation 7th Fleet. We receive your signal. Assistance is inbound. Hold your ground." Kitun exhaled a shaky breath. "They came," he whispered. Far above the planet, a wall of human ships emerged from warp, black-hulled and sleek, bristling with weapons and energy fields. Dreadnoughts, corvettes, support cruisers, carriers. Thousands of lights blinking in synchronized formation. At their center, the command ship ESS Rourke's Honor. Admiral Raina Rourke stood at the bridge viewport, her jaw tight, eyes locked on the planet below. Her grandmother's name glowed on the hull behind her. "They answered the call," she said, almost to herself. A voice came over the fleet channel. "Engage all battle groups. Protect the Rathuuni at all costs." The void lit up with engines and fire. The sky over Rathuun Prime had changed once more. Now, it burned with the fury of salvation. Echoes heard. Admiral Raina Rourke stood on the command bridge of the ESS Rourke's Honor, her gloved hands clasped behind her back as she stared at the real-time projection of Rathuun Prime. The planet rotated slowly in the center of the hollow table, its green and purple biosphere overlaid with red zones, enemy positions, orbital scans, and confirmed Xarn fleet signatures. A soft chime echoed. The room quieted. "Ma'am," the comms officer said, "we've confirmed the origin of the beacon. It matches encryption protocols used by 22nd Century Earth Recon Unit, specifically Lieutenant Elena Rourke." Raina didn't speak for a long moment. She was my grandmother. The crew around her stiffened. No one had known that. Not until now. In her private quarters, Raina sat before a narrow case built into the wall. She opened it with a retinal scan and removed a worn, black obsidian shard wrapped in an old cloth. Carved lines ran through its face, strange, sharp, beautiful. The artifact had been passed down for generations, alongside a story that was half legend. Elena Rourke had vanished on a scout mission. Rescued. Healed. She returned with no medals, no victory, only the tale of a forgotten world that had once saved her out of kindness and honor. Raina's father had spoken of it with reverence. Her mother, with disbelief. But Raina? She remembered holding the shard at night as a child, tracing the lines and whispering. We remember debts, even across lifetimes. Now the beacon had reawakened, and the debt had come due. The High Council of the Earth Federation had not wanted war. Not for an unregistered world. Not against the Xarn Dominion, who were dangerous, yes, but too far from Earth's interests to justify full intervention. Let them fend for themselves, the politicians had said. We cannot fight every battle for every species. But Raina had stood before them, tall, calm, and unmoving, and played a short audio file. A recovered log entry from Elena Rourke's final transmission. If they ever call, we go. No questions. One life for theirs, one day, an army for them. She didn't argue after that. She didn't need to. 3 days later, she'd launched with 6 task forces. 6 more fleets volunteered en route, not because they were ordered, but because humanity remembered. Somewhere between myth and military protocol, Elena Rourke's name had passed into legend among the outer colonies. Her act of survival, of bonding with an alien people no one had heard of, had become a story passed from one ship to another. A tale of the first real peace forged not in treaty, but in trust. They knew this was not just a mission. It was a promise fulfilled. Back on the bridge, Raina surveyed the enemy formations. Status on the Xarn fleet? Her tactical officer, Commander Jalek, replied grimly, 67 ships in orbit, more arriving from deep space relays. They're ignoring our initial hails. Raina frowned. Of course they are. The Xarn only speak in conquest. Ma'am, another officer asked, do we engage? She looked out at the stars, so much like the ones her grandmother had stared into decades ago, alone, wounded, and uncertain whether she'd be remembered. Now, an entire fleet flew under her name. Not yet, Raina said. We give them a choice. She tapped her console, transmitting a message directly toward the Xarn flagship. No encryption, no protocol, just a statement, spoken with clarity and steel. This is Admiral Raina Rourke of the Earth Federation. You are trespassing on sovereign territory under Earth protection. Withdraw or face immediate engagement. Seconds passed, then minutes. Then came the Xarn reply, a guttural snarl through static. You defend the weak. You embrace the forgotten. You will fall with them. Raina sighed and turned to her officers. Target their command ships. Begin attack protocol. And tell the fleet. She paused, her voice low but firm. We're not here because of politics. We're here because one of ours was saved. Now we return the favor. Understood, Admiral. Klaxons flared. Battle maps lit up. The sky around Rathuun Prime ignited with the light of human engines and weapon systems preparing to engage. Below, in the heart of the alien capital, Elder Kitten stood in a temple tower, watching as the clouds above rippled with the thunder of warships descending through atmosphere. Young Rathuuni stood beside him, warriors and acolytes alike, stunned by the vision. "They came," one of them whispered. Kittin's voice cracked with age, but was steady as stone. "No," they answered, the debt paid in full. The stars themselves seemed to burn. Space above Rathuun Prime had become a churning crucible of fire and light, where Earth's seventh fleet danced with death among the claws of the Xarn Dominion. The Federation dreadnoughts held the line, sleek, heavy vessels with hulls like mountains and hearts of plasma. Swarms of Xarn raiders buzzed through their formations like angry wasps, but they were met with precision, discipline, and sheer human resolve. Aboard ESS Rourke's Honor, Admiral Reyna Rourke stood unmoving at the command dais. "Status report," she said over the roar of distant impact tremors vibrating through the hull. "Xarn have lost 24 ships," replied Commander Jalek, blood pooling on his brow from a minor head wound. "We've lost 6 corvettes, 2 cruisers, and 1 destroyer. Their reinforcements are thinning." Reyna's jaw clenched. "And ground forces?" 3 Xarn assault pods broke through, came the reply. "They've landed outside the Rathuuni capital." Reyna's hands tightened behind her back. Her voice lowered. "Deploy Hammerfall teams. Protect the city at all costs." "Yes, Admiral." On the surface of Rathuun Prime, the earth trembled as the first Xarn shock troops struck the soil. Black armored beasts surged through the forested ridges, weapons fused to their chitinous limbs. They fired indiscriminately. Trees exploded. Sacred shrines turned to slag. Villagers fled, some too slow to escape the merciless advance. But before the Xarn could reach the capital gates, they met resistance. The air shimmered. Human drop pods thundered down like metal rain, slamming into the ground with bone-cracking force. Their hatches burst open, and soldiers in heavy exo-armor stormed out, blue visors gleaming, rifles raised. Hammerfall squads. Tier 1 intervention forces. The forest lit up with controlled bursts of gunfire. Pulse rounds ripped through Xarn limbs. Railguns roared. Smoke choked the hills. Captain Darius Cole, squad lead of Hammerfall Echo, charged down a slope alongside a unit of Rathuuni warriors who had joined them. Primitive weapons by comparison, but unshakable resolve. "Stick close to the lines," he shouted over the comms. "Protect civilians. Drive them back. No one gets through." Beside him, young Rathuuni fighters cried battle chants in their hissing, clicking tongue. Cole spared a glance at the ancient city walls rising in the distance, battered but unbroken. They were holding, barely. At the city's highest point, in the Tower of Stars, Elderkin knelt alone in the quiet of the temple's heart. The ancient beacon rested on the floor in front of him. Its glow pulsed weakly now, flickering between blue and white, almost spent. He reached out, placing a clawed hand gently upon it. "You carried our hope," he whispered. "You found them. You brought her back." A rumble shook the tower. Dust drifted down like snow. Kittin did not flinch. If he died here, he would die knowing that his people were not forgotten. In orbit, the Xarn fleet began a break. Reyna watched as the final enemy dreadnought ignited from within, torn apart by coordinated torpedo salvos and a railgun barrage that pierced its core reactor. "Signal to all fleets," she said calmly. "Begin orbital withdrawal. Leave patrol ships to monitor. Medical and engineering teams to descend." Commander Jalek nodded. "And you, Admiral?" Reyna turned her eyes toward the surface. "I'm going down." The lander touched down just outside the capital's edge, where smoke still drifted from the last wave of Xarn attackers. Reyna stepped out in full uniform, metals gleaming, boots crunching on Rathuuni soil. A crowd had already begun to gather. Warriors, elders, children. Among them stood Kittin, supported by a staff, his scales dulled by age and battle smoke. He approached slowly, eyes locked on hers. "You wear her face," he said. Reyna gave a small smile. "She was my blood." Kittin nodded once. "Then you are kin." As she was. He extended a hand, not in demand, but in remembrance. Reyna stepped forward and took it. Around them, the Rathuuni bowed in silence. Above them, human ships held position in the sky, casting long shadows of protection over the land. Later, in a quiet moment, Reyna stood atop the temple balcony where her grandmother had once looked at the stars in solitude. She placed the obsidian shard on the altar. Next to it, she laid a new item, a Federation officer's insignia etched with Elena Rourke's name. "You saved her once," she whispered. "Now we've saved you." She looked out at the horizon, where smoke no longer rose and children's laughter echoed faintly in the wind. A promise made, a debt paid, a bond reborn. Humanity had answered the call, and it would never again forget the world that once remembered them.